What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome to the first FPL video of the new season. The Premier League fixtures have been announced. We know who's got great opening fixtures, we know who's got bad opening fixtures, and we know what day one captaincy is going to look like for game week 1 as well. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail in this video, talk through the teams and stuff like that. We're not going to worry about specific players right now because obviously the game, FPL itself, hasn't even launched at the time of recording this, and obviously we don't know player prices and stuff like that. But for now, we're going to do a lot of speculation. So if you're excited for the new FPL season, give it a like, hit that subscribe button. There is content throughout this season, as you well know. Let's jump into it. Okay, so before we get into the list of best and worst fixtures, let's just take a look at game week 1, right? Because this is a week you want to get off to a good start. Just because you have a bad start doesn't mean you can't claw it back throughout the season and still finish on a high. But it's nice to start off well. So let's look how things are shaping up. So opening day, there's a few big teams that stand out. In fact, there's quite a few big teams that stand out that we could go for captaincy from. Although when you see the best fixtures in a minute, you're going to realise that some of these teams don't have great fixtures after the first match day. So the ones that stand out for me, Man United versus Leeds. What I will say is, I know a lot of people kind of started rating Leeds' defence towards the end of the season. They did have kind of fit centre-backs and all that good stuff as well. And they were doing a lot better. Throughout the season, they were poor. So I'm not saying I would necessarily avoid going against Leeds players. Like I wouldn't obviously avoid Man United players for game week 1. But we have to kind of maybe set expectations. They might be a little bit better than we, perhaps the stats and stuff for the season give them credit for. The other one is Chelsea versus Crystal Palace. I mean, we know that Tuchel's got a wealth of talent at his disposal. So will it be Pulisic, Havertz, Werner, Ziyech, Mount? Who's going to be in that front three? We're going to have to wait for pre-season. Obviously, one thing with this season versus maybe some other normal seasons is we've got the Euros as well. So our players are going to be back late from that. Like we know, well, we assume that teams like France and stuff will go all the way to the final. So will Chelsea be as good defensively if he needs an extra break before the start of the season? I'm sure most of them will be back, by the way. But it's just those things that we'll start thinking about throughout pre-season. And then you've got Liverpool versus Norwich, right? And if you remember, if you've played FPL all the way back to the Luis Suarez days, like Liverpool used to absolutely smash Norwich every time. And they had Leeds on the opening day of the season last year. They only just won by 1 goal, but they did score 4 in the process. So right now, I'm looking at this. Who's everyone captaining? Mo Salah. As things stand, obviously with no transfers in or out, he's absolutely nailed on. He's going to start this opening day as long as he's fit. Bam. That's 2 or 3 goals against Norwich locked in, isn't it? Everyone's going to go for Salah. There'll be a few people on Fernandes, maybe a few Chelsea captains as well, but the majority will be on Salah, I would say. Maybe Mane. Maybe Mane will get a price drop. I think he should. I think Mane should be less than Salah because it makes the decision too easy when Salah's the same price. Spurs versus City, difficult opening day for both of those teams. The newly promoted side, so Brentford have got Arsenal. That's fairly difficult, I would say. Watford have got Villa. Who knows? Maybe they could get off to a good start there. And obviously we know that Norwich have got Liverpool, which is pretty difficult. All the other fixtures are kind of much of a muchness. So let's look at the best ones and then we'll look at the worst ones. Okay, so these are the teams with the best opening fixtures. Obviously it's a bit of a sea of green for obvious reasons, right? We're looking at teams with the best fixtures. I probably will come up with maybe, I think in the official FPL fixture difficulty rating, they use a couple of other colours. And I might do that as well, just because there's some teams which I think are really good to target. There's some which are quite good. There's some which aren't so good, and there's some which are awful. So we probably need 4 different colours. But for the purposes of this video, this will be fine. Big shout out to Marco, by the way, for sorting the graphics out for the new season. This is just a taste of things to come. We've really upped the game now in terms of production. So hopefully you appreciate that. If you do, give it a like. Why not? Hit that subscribe button. Okay, so Liverpool, as I just said, great opening fixture Norwich. Then they get to play Burnley. They've got Leeds and Crystal Palace in their opening 5 games. The only difficult fixture is Chelsea, right? So straight away, triple Liverpool looks good. Trent, Salah, maybe one other, whether that's Jota, although he will definitely get a price rise this season. Maybe a double up with Robertson. Let's see what price Van Dijk is and whether he's fit. There's obviously lots to consider, but double or triple Liverpool already looks very good. And what I would say is, as much as we're looking at the fixtures and I'm already saying things like they look very good, double, triple ups, don't go into the season narrow-minded where you've already picked your team, because prices will dictate our thinking. There's everything to say that kind of Trent and Robertson will be the same price. There's people predicting them getting a price drop. I don't see it personally, but we'll have to wait and see. And obviously, pre-season injuries and stuff all have to be taken into account. Teams that were bad might make loads of good signings, etc. So don't narrow yourself into a team already, but it looks pretty difficult to go without Mo Salah, I'll be honest. Everton looked pretty decent. Remember, they had a pretty good opening set of fixtures last year. The only bad one I think they had was Spurs on the opening day, right? Calvert-Lewin, again, looks pretty good. I'm sure he's going to get a little bit of a price rise. What was he? I think he was 7 last year, so 7.58 million possibly. But Southampton, Leeds, Burnley and Villa, arguably their most difficult game is Brighton. I actually find Villa quite hard to read at the moment because the stats over the season weren't actually that good, but at times they defended really well. And then Grealish got injured and then the defence wasn't quite as good because obviously he does so much ball carrying, right? And he gets the ball up the pitch, therefore less defending, etc. So I'm not sure that's a super green fixture. We could put it as like the middle one, the kind of whitish colour. But still pretty decent. West Ham's are quite good. Remember, West Ham had a great season. Whether or not Moyes can now replicate that, we'll have to wait and see. He has signed a new contract now. I think he's there for another 3 years. But Newcastle's not a bad opening game. They do have Leicester and Man United in their first 5. But as part of their first 4, it's Newcastle, Palace and Southampton. So that is looking pretty good. And obviously, just because the team's got a good set of fixtures doesn't mean you need 3 players, right? And with maybe cheap defenders and stuff like that, you can rotate them as well. So, West Ham defender, maybe you play them for Newcastle, skip for Leicester, then play Palace and Southampton. Looks quite good to me. Brighton, I really like the look of. So they've got 2 promoted sides in their first 4 games. They've also got Burnley and Everton. Again, when I colour these FDRs, the fixture difficulty ratings going forward for pre-season, I'm going to use a set template based on stats only, not necessarily based on my own thoughts. And Burnley and Everton were both pretty poor defensively last year. Like everyone's saying about them losing Ancelotti. We've got to wait and see. I don't think there's all this talk about was Nuno going there, but I think he's going to Palace. I don't think any of the managers have been officially sorted yet. Maybe I've been so locked into Euro 2020 that I've not noticed. But I think Everton and Burnley are better fixtures than a lot of people will give them credit for. And then you've got Watford and Brentford as well. Now, with Brighton, I'm definitely looking at a defender. I'm very interested to see how they price Brighton defenders. I've got a feeling the goalkeeper will be 5 million, and Lamptey, Webster, White, etc. will all be 5 million as well. But that might not completely put me off because I do think Brighton, stats-wise, they were very good last year. It didn't necessarily translate into performances all the time. But at some point, if they keep performing like that, expected data tends to catch up. So I'm very interested in Brighton players. Obviously, Leicester's not quite as good then. For Villa, they've got Watford and Brentford as well in their opening 3. So for Villa, they have 2 promoted sides in their first 3 fixtures, plus Newcastle at home. So Jack Grealish could be someone to look at. Watkins, both likely to get price rises. Whether or not I would jump on the Villa defence, I don't know quite yet. But attack, I'm definitely looking at. Chelsea away is obviously difficult. Then they got Everton at home. But we do have transfers, right? So we don't have to keep these players forever. And then Man United looking good. Fernandes absolutely getting a price rise. We'll have to wait and see if Sancho gets transferred in by Man United and then maybe buy us into our Game Week 1 teams. But Leeds at home, Southampton away, and Newcastle at home in the first 4 is pretty decent. We know Wolves have been a good defensive side in the past, and last season, although they didn't perform well, again, their stats were still good, but they've lost the manager now, so it'll be interesting to see how they perform, basically. We might have a look at pre-season. I wouldn't take that too much into account, but I wouldn't put Wolves as pushovers. But as an opening set of 4 or 5 fixtures, Man United are looking good. So maybe a defender, depending on how they're priced, like Luke Shaw, for example. But ultimately, we're all going to be interested when FPL drops. What price is Bruno Fernandes? So, remember how I was saying that Chelsea have got a great opening day fixture against Palace? Look at the fixtures after that. 3 of their first 5 are Arsenal away, Liverpool away, and Spurs away. Now, that wouldn't necessarily put me off a Chelsea defender in particular because their defence is so good under Tuchel. But I've got a feeling, obviously, they're all going to get a price hike. Like, we're not going to get Rudiger for as cheap as we got him last year. No way, in fact. So they're all going to get a price hike, and therefore it's probably going to be worth looking at other defenders. Maybe if you've got like a Chelsea defender and you're in the middle of the season and they get fixtures like this, you just keep them because it's not worth the transfer. But for our Game Week 1 opening sides, it just doesn't look worth it to have a Chelsea player to me. Now, obviously, we'll have to wait and see the prices and stuff like that. But I'm kind of already ruling them out. But obviously, I'm going in not narrow-minded, right? I'm keeping an open mind. Norwich, it's really bad. Okay, so they've got Liverpool at home, which we already knew. Then Man City away, Arsenal away in their first 3. The other one is Leicester, so that's not even any easier. In fact, Leicester, you could almost be as difficult as Arsenal, to be completely honest. And then they've got Watford at home, right? So we can maybe in pre-season look a bit further ahead. But to be honest, when I build my team, it's for game weeks like 1 to 4, maybe. Well, it's basically between 4 to 6 game weeks in advance, right? So I'm not looking much further than that because chances are I'll look to wildcard early anyway. Southampton is pretty difficult as well. Newcastle always probably their best fixture in the first 5. Outside of that, they've got Man United, Man City, West Ham and Everton. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what the likes of Danny Ings do. Do they get transferred out? I mean, there was talk last season about him wanting to move away. Whether or not that will happen, though, we'll have to wait and see. But their fixtures are looking pretty brutal. Leeds aren't too much better either. Man United away is fairly difficult. They've also got Liverpool in their opening 4. Burnley and Newcastle aren't too bad. But with Everton in there as well, it might be difficult to go for Leeds players. So I'm expecting Stuart Dallas to possibly be listed as a midfielder. He won't be in our teams at all. It'll be like 6.5 million. It'd be like Lundstrom last year. No chance of being in the team. So whether or not there's another defender that we want to go for, I'm not sure about that. And obviously Bamford's going to get a price hike as well. So he'll be competing with other cheaper strikers now. And also the likes of maybe Watkins, etc. that have got better fixtures essentially, and Calvert-Lewin and players like that. Palace, I think, are a team we probably want to avoid. Obviously, we know Hodgson's going to leave. I think I should double check. But I don't think that Nuno is officially signed. In fact, I think he might have walked away. I think that deal might be off, but we'll have to wait and see. But Chelsea away, Spurs at home, and Liverpool away. So it'll be interesting to see who comes in there. I will be avoiding, right? They were not good last season. They've just lost their manager, who was a good manager as well. And the fixtures are brutal. So Crystal Palace going nowhere near them. Although Brentford at home could be decent in game week 2. And then Leicester again, fairly difficult. Leicester have got not awful fixtures like maybe Chelsea or Norwich, but they've got a lot of mid teams, which I wouldn't necessarily like to back against. So Wolves, West Ham, Brighton. I wouldn't rule Jamie Vardy out still, although he is obviously now another year older, even though he had a pretty cracking start to last season. Norwich away looks good, but with Man City in there as well, I'd probably be avoiding Leicester players. I think the likes of Maddison and Barnes are all probably due a little bit of a price rise as well. So they're probably the 6 teams that I will be mostly looking to avoid. But again, with rotation and stuff like that, it doesn't mean they're necessarily hard avoids, because Leeds, for example, okay, Man United away is not great on the opening day, but we know how they can play against the big sides. Right? They do sometimes like to go and attack. Then once that fixture's out of the way, well, then it's Everton, Burnley and Newcastle. 3 good fixtures in the next 4. So none of these teams are necessarily hard avoids for me, apart from probably Norwich and Chelsea, just because of their price, versus like Man United assets, Liverpool assets, maybe Spurs, Man City, etc. So yeah, they're pretty bad fixtures. Based on those 2, best and worst, let me know who you're going for. Okay, so this isn't strictly everyone else, right? Because I've missed out a couple of teams, but I just thought there were some other teams that were interesting to talk about. Some of the top teams, like newly promoted Brentford, and where, although they've maybe not got the best or the worst fixtures, they've maybe got middling fixtures. And obviously with a team like Man City, we know they're going to blow most teams apart anyway. So even though they've got a difficult game against Spurs, right, and I've got to be honest, I've not completely looked into best captains and stuff like that just yet, but Norwich at home, Man City, that looks like a good fixture to target. So although they got Spurs away on the opening day, a Man City attacker, De Bruyne maybe, Sterling if he's back in favour, Mahrez obviously did really well last year, Foden played a lot more minutes as well. They are players we could be looking at for game week 2 because the fixtures are so good. Although then they do have Arsenal and Leicester. So for Man City, it's a fairly tricky opening set of fixtures, but they are just so good. I would probably want to have an attacker for game week 2, right? I'm already eyeing that up. For Spurs then, second on the list, again, a couple of difficult fixtures in the opening 5. City and Chelsea kind of bookmark their or bookend their opening 5. But in between, Wolves away, difficult-ish, and then Watford and Palace, which are pretty good. So again, we're going to have to wait and see what price someone like Harry Kane gets. But Watford at home and Palace away, game week 3 and 4, are already looking quite good for him. So already I'm thinking Salah game week 1, maybe De Bruyne game week 2, Kane game week 3 and 4, although we know that Salah's also got really good fixtures in the opening 5 as well. So it's going to be an interesting talking point of which premium players that we go for once we know a bit more, right? Obviously, there's no point in worrying about it right now. It's the 16th of June. It's another couple of months until FPL launches, but we still want to have a bit of a think about it. Arsenal, Brentford away, so good opening fixture. Then 2 really difficult fixtures, arguably the 2 most difficult fixtures you can get from an attacking point of view because Chelsea and Man City defence is just so good. But then it's Norwich and Burnley. So it might be worth carrying an Arsenal player through if they've got a good enough price for game week 1, 4 and 5 because Brentford, Norwich and Burnley is just so good. Brentford's fixtures, they're kind of middling. Arsenal at home, difficult-ish, then Palace, Villa, Brighton, Wolves. No like massively standout, completely awful fixture like Man United, Man City, I don't know, Spurs, Chelsea, etc. But some middling fixtures. So it'd be interesting to see what Ivan Toney comes in at, his price, because a lot of people are eyeing him up. I just don't see how he can move more than 6.5 million. I think that'd be extremely harsh to price him at 7 or more. So he'll be in people's thoughts for sure. Wolves, obviously, going to get a new manager. I think Bruno Laga is the manager. I don't know if he's been confirmed yet or it's still waiting to happen. There's all this, like, Nuno, I've just looked it up. He's not a Palace. Now they're thinking about going to Everton, but that's not confirmed either. So it's all a bit up in the air. But we can see how they set up for the first 3 weeks because Leicester, Spurs and Man United not great, but then it's straight into 2 newly promoted sides, Watford and Brentford. So don't completely rule their players out. Let's say if Jimenez gets back fit and is able to play as well. Wolves have got some good players. It would just be nice to see them attack a little bit more. And then Burnley I've put in as well. Obviously Liverpool and Arsenal are difficult. Let's see if Ashley Young signs. He could get priced as defender, maybe play as a midfielder. Brighton, Leeds, Everton, they're okay, but we probably want to avoid Burnley from the start. So that's kind of everyone else. Man City, though, game week 2, that looks decent. But there we have it, the first FPL kind of video for the season, right? The game isn't launched yet, but I'm hoping now that fixtures are in, it's not going to be too long till it is launching. You know what's going to happen as soon as it is. Plenty of FPL content. So please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and hit that like button. If you are new to the channel, right, if you've never watched me before, I do content pretty much daily throughout the season. Obviously, when there's like international breaks and stuff, maybe not. But throughout the season, like all the way from game week 1 to 38, you're not going to miss a thing if you subscribe to this channel. So make sure you do. Once FPL's live, we'll be all over that content. The Euro content is not stopping though. That'll be intertwined between the FPL stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of important match days to come in the Euro, and I will have a deadline stream later. So thank you for watching. Let's enjoy it. There's still a few months. Don't lock too many players in, apart from Mo Salah. And hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you soon.